So I'm going to start out, we're going to talk a little bit about transition planning and helping to improve student outcomes. Are you going to click this for me? Okay, so the measurement for indicator 13 is the percent of youth that are 16, and they have IEPs, and in that IEP should be appropriate measurable transition goals. There should be assessments, age-appropriate assessments that should be listed, transition services, course of study, and annual IEP goals. There's also evidence that the student was invited to that IEP meeting, and that's one of our biggest ahas, is that we're not sure if the people that are doing the file reviews are marking that the student wasn't there, or are they marking that they weren't invited? Because I believe that a lot of our forms were changed to populate that student's name in that meeting notice, and it should show that, that the student was invited to the IEP meeting. But if there are districts that require signatures for IEPs, and what I have had conversation with a few people, and Melissa yesterday kind of basically told me that in Springfield, if you didn't have a signature next to your name, that meant you weren't there. Whether you forgot to sign it, or whether you were in attendance, but possibly the page wasn't sent around for you to sign. So if that is the district's guidance, but yet that person was invited to the IEP meeting, I think we need some big clarification around that.
We have some issues with forms, and also signatures are not required by federal law.
Yeah.
So
we know that they're not required by federal law, but districts require them.
Districts can't put in something that exceeds federal law. So we need to look at how we would do that.
Mm-hmm. And then you need to have evidence that there was a representative from an agency that possibly could be paying for or providing services for that student. So, ta-da-da-da-da, I'm so excited because the last 2 years we've had slippage in indicator 13. And as you will see in 2013, which is the last one, I know this is hard to see, but it's the dark blue one. We went up in all areas, but if you'll notice, this is 93%. It went from 88 to 93, but it's the lowest. Inviting that student is the lowest. So it jumped a bunch, which I think the guidance that we've given people and the training that we've done, it jumped, but we're still at the lowest. But we're pretty good here. We're above 90 on all of them, and 90, 98, and 97 for agencies identified. That's fabulous, especially with the Employment First and the executive order and all the things that are happening with our collaboration with VR and ODDS. That's kudos for the districts.
I was just going to say another question, not to focus on that part of the SPRNI, but if we also ask people at their tables to talk about where do you find that information when you're doing the file review? Mm-hmm. Because that's getting them thinking about not just the signature, but the invitation notice, because it's not just about that one place. People remember there are other places that also might be written in the notes. Student said blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So it's not just that one front cover sheet where that can be found.
Definitely, definitely. So this is over the last 5 years. Go ahead. So, looking for where that student is invited. If we look at the current year, there should be evidence in that cumulative folder that their name is on that meeting notice. And remember, I put invited in large letters there, because remember, it's were they invited, not did they attend. So an example would be you're going to look for a letter inviting the student. A non-example is a box that's checked indicating that a student did not attend the IEP meeting. That doesn't tell me, if the student didn't attend, that means nothing. If they were invited, that's what we're looking for. So The very first thing you want to see in an IEP for transition planning is to be able to look to see if was there an assessment done. The age-appropriate assessment is what the whole transition plan builds itself upon. Out of that assessment, you're going to get the PINs, which that's the acronym, but it stands for preference, interests, needs, and strengths of that student. So defining that is an ongoing process of collecting data on those students. And we need to have out of that data needs to come the strengths, needs, preference, and interests, and then what they're thinking of, where are they gonna go, where are they gonna work. And it should be educational, there should be living and personal and social environments that should be involved in that assessment, the data coming from that assessment. So the assessments, again, they serve as the common thread for building that plan. If you don't give an assessment, I'm not sure how you do the rest of that, what is in indicator 13. Because you're going to define everything that they're going to work on, and you're going to define their services. So, but on that page, that one-page document, it talks about things being informal or formal. So if you're talking, a lot of people just do an observation or do a survey with a student or an interview. You still need to look, I believe you go through and you do a little file review. You can look at some of their achievement tests from prior. You can look at interviews from prior. You can look at IQ testing. You could look at their adaptive rating scales. So there are things that you can see in that review. It should hit these areas when you're doing it too. You need to look at academics. You need to look at self-determination. You need to look at vocation. What are they even talking about that they want to do or be a part of? And their adaptive rating scales. Are they independent? Can they do some of the things that they're talking about? We always talk about how people want to squash the reality of what a student wants to be. And we had a really good presentation at the Teacher Institute where she's talked about recalculating your ideals. And if we all think about things in our life of where we wanted to be and what we wanted to be doing, we maybe went on that journey, but we recalculated as we got our education, as we built our families, as we did the things that we did. And one of her stories was around her son had Down syndrome, and he was in love with the basketball coach at University of Oregon, and that was his girlfriend. And he was going to marry her. And she always felt like, as a parent, should I stop him from talking about that? Should I stop him from wanting her to go to the basketball games? And she kind of said that out loud in front of a group of men, and the men responded back to her, men always recalculate who they're going to date and who they're going to marry. So that was kind of their conversation
men always
around
shoot
that.
high.
Yeah.
And that society will let them know they've shot too high.
Yeah. So she was just making that comment, but I think that's true. I mean, I had a lot of kids that wanted to do things that I knew that they weren't going to be capable of doing. But we always tried to find out through some of these assessments, some of the interviews, some of the surveys, what is it about that they want to do, and how can I connect their skills and their strengths to that? So people are always wondering where you post the information for the age-appropriate transition assessment, and it should be clearly stated in that present level of performance. Some people are going to post it on a transition page, but there should be something that's involved in that present level of performance that should lead you maybe to a transition page, or it might lead you somewhere else, but there should be a statement in there.